भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, today we are starting new chapter, chapter 23rd, Maharaj Prithu's going back home. Text 1 to 3. Maitri uvacha drishtvatmanam pravayasam ekada vanyatmavan atmana vardhita shesha svanu sargah prajapati jagatastasthusya तुश्चापि वृत्तिदो धर्मभृत सताम निष्पादितेश्वरादेशो यदर्थम इह जज्ञवान् आत्मजेष्व आत्मजां न्यस्य विरहाद्रुदतीम इव प्रजासु विमनः श्वेकः सदारो अगात तपोवनम. Archana Mataji, please mute yourself. At the last stage of his life, when Maharaj Prithu saw himself getting old, that great soul who was kind, who was the king of the world, divided whatever opulence he had accumulated amongst all kinds of living entities, moving and non-moving. He arranged pensions for everyone according to religious principles, and after executing the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in complete coordination with him, he dedicated his sons unto the earth, which was considered to be his daughter. Then Maharaj Prithu left the presence of his citizens, who were almost lamenting and crying from feeling separation from the king, and went to the forest alone with his wife to perform austerities. Wow. Maharaj Prithu was one of the Shaktavish incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as such, he appeared on the surface of the earth to execute the orders of the Supreme. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Lord is the proprietor of all planets and is always anxious to see that in each and every planet the living entities are happily living and executing their duties. As soon as there is some discrepancy in the execution of duties, the Lord appears on earth as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, yada yada hi dharmasya. So Supreme Lord, it's not like he created the material creation and he just left it, okay, you guys do whatever you want to. No. He's always anxious to see that in each and every planet the living entities are happily living and executing their duties. This is what the main purpose is, because of his Krishna's love for all of us. We are all his part and parcels. And we are his anshas, we are his creation. He is our Father, eternal Father, in that way, because we all come from him. So he wants to see that everybody is living happily. But at the same time, we have independence, so we choose our independence in a wrong way. So when he sees there is some discrepancy in the execution of duties, he appears or he sends somebody. Since there were so many discrepancies during the reign of King Vena, the Lord sent his most confidential devotee, Maharaj Prithu, to settle things. Therefore, after executing the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and settling the affairs of the world, Maharaj Prithu was ready to retire. He had been exemplary in his governmental administration, and now he was to become exemplary in his retirement. He divided all his property amongst his sons and appointed them to rule the world. And then he went to the forest with his wife. It is significant in this connection that it is said that Maharaj Prithu retired alone and at the same time took his wife with him. According to Vedic principles, when retiring from family life, one can take his wife with him, for the husband and wife are considered to be one unit. Thus, they can both combinedly perform austerities for liberation. So, Vanprasthashram, after when the when the husband gets retired, he can take, or he can, or he doesn't need to, whichever way it goes, whatever is favorable. He can take his wife to the forest, but not when he takes sannyas. That is different. But one plus he can take. This is the path for Maharaj Prithu, who was an exemplary character, followed, and this is also the way of Vedic civilization. One should not simply remain at home until the time of death, but should separate from family life at a timely moment and prepare himself to go back to Godhead. As a Shaktavesh incarnation of God who had actually come from Vaikuntha as a representative of Krishna, Maharaj Prithu was certain to go back to Godhead. Nonetheless, in order to set the example in all ways, he also underwent severe austerities in the Tapovan. It appears that in those days there were many Tapovans or forests, especially meant for retirement and the practice of austerities. Indeed, it was compulsory for everyone to go to the Tapovan to fully accept the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For it is very difficult to retire from family life and at the same time remain at home. So in those days, there was Tapovan, or the places where one can perform austerities, and it was all over. Especially if you go towards Badrinath, Kedarnath, Yamunotri, that area. So the idea was to completely retire, completely get detached from the household affairs, from the family life, completely detached, and prepare oneself for the next life. So he's setting an example. Although he's Shaktavesh Avatar, he didn't have to do it, but he's setting an example for all his praja to follow. तत्रापि यदाभ्यनियमो वैखानस सुसम्मते आरब्ध उग्र तपसी यथा स्वविजये पुरा. After retiring from family life, Maharaj Prithu strictly followed the regulations of retired life and underwent severe austerities in the forest. He engaged in these activities as seriously as he had formerly engaged in leading the government and conquering everyone. As it is necessary for one to become very active in family life, similarly, after retirement from family life, it is necessary to control the mind and the senses. This is possible when one engages himself fully in the devotional service of the Lord. Actually, the whole purpose of the Vedic system, the Vedic social order, is to enable one to ultimately return home, back to Godhead. The Grahastha ashram is a sort of concession combining sense gratification with the regulative life. It is to enable one to easily retire in the middle of life and engage fully in austerities in order to transcend material sense gratification once and for all. So this is why the whole system of Varnashram is very, very scientific. It's not like one remains as a grihastha for the rest of his life, and okay, so now I'm retired. Now I take care of my grandchildren. I play with them, and then I do lots of other activities. No, retirement means now prepare for next life. Therefore, in the Vanprastha stage of life, tapasya or austerity is strongly recommended. Maharaj Prithu followed exactly all the rules of Vanprastha life, which is technically known as Vaikhansa ashram. The word Vaikhansa susamate is significant because in Vanprastha life, The regulated principles are also to be strictly followed. In other words, Maharaj Prithu was an ideal character in every sphere of life. Mahajano yena gata sapantha. One should follow in the footsteps of great personalities. Thus, by following the exemplary character of Maharaj Prithu, one can become perfect in all respects while living this life or while retiring from active life. Thus, after giving up this body, one can become liberated and go back to Godhead. So that's the whole purpose of Varnashram system. The point is, we should try to follow it to as much as possible, because these days Tapovan, the ones are all gone, and these austerities actually they start from brahmacharya life, when people start getting practicing some austerities. So it's not like after retirement one starts practicing austerities. Then the body is too old to learn something new. So brahmacharya life, a good brahmachari makes a good grihastha, and a good grihastha is trained properly. He makes a good vanprasthi, and then he makes a good sannyasi. So what he was eating over there, kandamula falahara shushka parnashana kvachit avabhaksha kati chit pakshana vayu bhakshastataha param. In the Tapovan, Maharaj Prithu sometimes ate the trunks and roots of trees, and sometimes he ate fruit and dried leaves, and for some weeks he drank only water. Finally, he lived simply by breathing air. In Bhagavad Gita, yogis are advised to go to a secluded place in the forest and live alone in a sanctified spot there. By Prithu Maharaj's behavior, we can understand that when he went to the forest, he did not eat any cooked food sent from the city by some devotees or disciples. As soon as one takes a vow to live in the forest, he must simply eat roots, tree trunks, fruits, dried leaves, or whatever nature provides in that way. Prithu Maharaj strictly adopted these principles for living in the forest. And sometimes he ate nothing but dried leaves and drank nothing but a little water. So he ate nothing but the dried leaves because there was sometimes nothing else available. Sometimes he lived on nothing but air, and sometimes he ate some fruit from the trees. In this way, he lived in the forest and underwent severe austerities, especially in regards to eating. In other words, overeating is not at all recommended for one who wants to progress in spiritual life. Srila Rupa Goswami also warns that too much eating and too much endeavor, atyahara prayasascha, are against the principles by which one can advance in spiritual life. So Vanpra's life, living in the forest, he was living, and Prabhupada said he went to the forest. He did not eat any cooked food. So anything that is available naturally, that's what he was eating. So sometimes, see, envious people, ignorant people are always there, and when they make some claims, it really bothers. So sometimes people say Lord Ram, he was a Kshatriya, so when he went to the forest, he ate meat. Prithu Maharaj is a Kshatriya. And it is said, one who lives in the forest, he lives simply on roots and tree trunks and fruits and dried leaves or water. So same thing about Lord Ram. When somebody brought this up in front of Prabhupada, Prabhupada said, if Ram wants, he can eat the whole universe. What's the big deal for him? Not eat means he wants to swallow or he wants to just disappear the whole universe, he can do that immediately. But he did not eat meat. He followed perfectly the the rules of living in the forest. In fact, when he went from Ayodhya and he stayed a night at Nishad Raja's place, Maharaj Gohka, there Maharaj arranged a nice place, nice room for him to sleep, nice bed. But Ram said, no, I have taken this vow 14 years. I will live in the forest. I will not live in the city. And I'll not sleep on the bed. I'll not eat anything cooked. So he basically, a bed was made for him out of dried leaves. And he slept outside the city. He didn't even enter the city. So he was so particular about following the rules. It is also notable that according to Vedic injunctions, to live in the forest is to live in the mode of complete goodness, whereas to live in the city is to live in the mode of passion, and to live in a brothel or drinking house is to live in the mode of ignorance. However, to live in a temple is to live in Vaikuntha, which is transcendental to all the modes of material nature. This Krishna consciousness movement affords one the opportunity to live in the temple of the Lord, which is as good as Vaikuntha. Consequently, a Krishna conscious person does not need to go to the forest and artificially try to imitate Maharaj Prithu or the great sages and munis who used to live in the forest. So obviously in Kali Yuga we are not that equipped properly to live in the forest and do all these kinds of austerities. So for us, we can live at home and we can make the home a temple and offer everything to the Lord and pass our time chanting and reading. That's the best way to do. And once in a while we can go for the yatras. That's a different story. Srila Rupa Goswami, after retiring from his minister's seat in the government, went to Vrindavan and lived beneath a tree, like Maharaj Prithu. Since then, many people have gone to Vrindavan to imitate Rupa Goswami's behavior. Instead of advancing in spiritual life, many have fallen into material habits and even in Vrindavan have become victims of illicit sex, gambling, and intoxication. The Krishna consciousness movement has been introduced in the Western countries, but it's not possible for Westerners to go to the forest and practice severe austerities, which were ideally practiced by Prithu Maharaj or Rupa Goswami. However, Westerners or anyone else who can follow in the footsteps of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur by living in a temple, which is transcendental to residence in a forest, and to vow to accept Krishna Prasad and nothing else, follow the regulative principles and chant 16 rounds daily of the Hare Krishna mantra. In this way, one's spiritual life will never be disturbed. So Prabhupada makes it real easy or comfortable for us to follow. Just live in the temple and follow the principles, like eat only Krishna Prasad, chant 16 rounds daily, and that's it. One's spiritual life will never be disturbed. Grishme pancha tapaviro varshasva sahara shan munihi akantha magna shishire udake sthandileshaya. Following the principles of forest living and the footsteps of the great sages and munis, Prithu Maharaj accepted 5 kinds of heating processes during the summer season, exposed himself to torrents of rain in the rainy season, and in the winter stood in water up to his neck. He also used to simply lie down on the floor to sleep. These are some of the austerities executed by the jnanis and yogis who cannot accept the process of bhakti yoga. They must undergo such severe types of austerity in order to become purified from material contamination. Panchtapaha refers to 5 kinds of heating processes. One is enjoined to sit within a circle of fire with flames blazing from 4 sides and the sun blazing directly overhead. This is one kind of Panchtapaha recommended for austerity. Similarly, in the rainy season, one is enjoined to expose himself to torrents of rain, and in winter to sit in cold water up to the neck. As far as bedding is concerned, the ascetic should be content with simply lying on the floor. The purpose for undergoing such severe austerities is to become a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, as explained in the next verse. So all these severe austerities is basically to get us out of the bodily conception of life. But it's very severe for the yogis to go through. One kind of heating process, Prabhupada explains, you put fire on the 4 sides around you, and you sit in the middle and have the sun on top, burning sun, hot sun on top. And in the middle of all this, do the meditation or do the tapasya. There's a nice story about Napoleon. When he came to India and on his way back, he had heard of so many yogis. So he saw one yogi, and he was doing this kind of tapasya with fire burning all around him and the sun shining on head, and he was sitting in the middle and trying to do his tapasya. So Napoleon asked him that you come with me, because he wanted to take him to his country to show people what the yogis from India look like. And the yogi said, why should I come with you? Who are you? Why should I come with you? And Napoleon got angry. Napoleon's soldiers got angry. Napoleon got angry. And how dare you ask me these questions? And the yogi said, you are a servant of my servant. Why should I follow your orders? You should be following my orders. And now he got really bewildered. What is he talking about? He said, well, what do you mean? I'm servant of your servant. The yogi said, see, you're servant of your senses, servant of your mind. Your mind is not in control. You're getting angry unnecessarily. And I have complete control over my mind. So you're servant of your mind, and I'm controller of the mind. So you're servant of my servant. Why should I follow you? Why should I listen to you? So Napoleon he just didn't have any answer. So he said, okay, I will not take you with me, but I want to give you some benedictions. What do you want? The yogi said, this guy is not just getting the answer. He's not learning his lesson. So yogi said, okay, you want to give me something? Really, you want to give me something? Napoleon said, yeah, ask me anything. He said, okay, just step away because you're blocking the sun. And let me do my tapasya. Just go away. So this kind of yogis are there. But it's too severe, too much an austerity. So the point is just chant 16 rounds and follow the principles. Eat Krishna Prasad, chant and dance in Harinam. That will make us more dear to Krishna than any yogi or tapasvi can. Please, Krishna. So we'll stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments? Okay, so we can stop here. You all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada.